Hi, fantasy readers. This is Corinne Norton, your fellow book binger, and you are listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where you can test out a new fantasy story every single week to find your next favorite author. Today, we pick up where we left off last week in The Minstrel and the Dragon. So if you haven't listened to part 1, go back and do that before you keep listening to this episode. It's one that keeps you guessing who's the real villain. And I love that sort of morally gray component in stories. But I'll stop talking so I don't accidentally give away any spoilers. Today's narrator is Paeter Frandsen, host of Christian Geek Central. Stick around to the end or check out today's show notes to see where you can find more from both the author and the narrator. For now, please enjoy The Minstrel and the Dragon, Part 2, by M.H. Woodscourt.
Waking in pitch darkness was unnerving enough, even without disturbing dreams nudging him into consciousness. Thanen held perfectly still, willing his eyes to pierce the black space before him. His nerves were raw. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he couldn't see his hand before his face or catch a glimpse of the gems and coins stacked throughout the cavern. Gems, coins, cavern. Thanen had never considered himself a coward. Cautious, yes, but never a coward. Until now, when a whimper escaped his lips. Then again, anyone might whimper when he realized he was in a dark cavern with a dragon close by. "You're awake." The voice that spoke rumbled, sending coins cascading onto stone. Light flickered in the darkness, and 2 great slitted sapphire eyes settled on Thanen, threatening to make him faint again. But this time he knew how to brace. "I am," he agreed. It wouldn't be smart to lie to a dragon, nor to be contrary. Silence followed, and Thanen felt compelled to break it. "Why is it dark in here now? Where did the light go?" "I snuffed it. I thought it best if you didn't see me like this immediately upon waking again." He nodded, uncertain whether she could see in the dark. "Makes sense. I am still Rinshera," she said in that horrible, rumbling voice. "Are you?" he squeaked, making him doubt his previous conviction about cowardice. "Yes," was her calm, rumbling reply. "What do you want with me?" He was desperate to know, even if the answer was sustenance. "Nothing. I didn't summon you, remember?" True. That was true. "Listen, Thanen. I want nothing from you, but if you wish to become a minstrel true, that I can help with. What do you want?" His mouth worked while his mind processed her words. His answers spilled out unthought. "I want to stay alive." The dragon's reverberating laugh was fear itself, striking against his soul like drums. Coins spilled from mounds, almost musical. The dragon's enormous eyes came closer. Luminous, jewel-like, to pierce him through. "That is no difficulty. I told you, we dragons prefer venison. Unless you are some misshapen deer, you are no temptation for me." He shook his head vigorously in case there was the faintest doubt on that point. "I'm entirely human, I promise." The dragon chuffed. There was no other word for it. "I had that impression." The reality of Thanen's situation was only slowly falling into place, but a smile nudged at his lips as one fact dawned on him. He was conversing with a dragon, like they were sipping tea in one of those fancy rooms rich folk had, the kind with silk settees and fur rugs, roaring fires and silver trays. "You're really not going to eat me?" "I will not repeat myself," the dragon said. "Can we move on to the next point, please?" He shook his head, at a loss on what that was. "I'm sorry, what Do you want my help, Thanen? You have the raw talent. Your voice is good. Your fingers are lithe. But do you want to become great?" Something in him screamed to say yes, but instead he asked, "Why?" "Why be great?" "No, why help me?" Those slitted eyes tipped sideways, and Thanen imagined her great scaled head cocking. "Because I like you." His jaw dropped. Could a dragon like somebody? Weren't they natural enemies to humans? Or was it possible? Did the stories and songs have it all wrong after all? If Rinshera was to be believed, then this wasn't the first dragon he'd encountered. If what he'd thought was the world's song was instead a dragon hiding out in some cave while the storm raged, and finding him had guided him with music to its shelter. "Do you hate people?" "Not as a rule. I do hate some people," Rinshera answered. "Indeed, I'm not too fond of your mother from all you've said, though it is unjust to judge her as it stands now." "Do you hate dragon slayers?" Silence followed that question. Then the ground shook, and Thanen threw his arms over his head like somehow that would save him from the crushing weight of 1,000-ton dragon. Or was it 10,000 tons? He had no head for numbers. The quaking ceased. Then light filled the cavern, winking and rippling across the mounds of treasure. Thanen lowered his arms and spotted the dragon, platinum scales sparkling, seated as close as she dared to the low ceiling under which he stood. She didn't look upset, but then he had no idea how to read dragon expressions. "I am afraid of them," she said, in a soft voice he hadn't expected. Nor had he expected it to resound through his head, unspoken in the world around him. "They do not know better than to hunt my kind. Some are cruel and greedy, seeking only pleasure in our deaths or wealth in harvesting our scales, teeth, blood, and bones." "Not your eyes?" He immediately cursed himself for asking such an insensitive question. "Dragon eyes contain such a curse that few would dare, even among dragon slayers." "Ah." He didn't know what else to say. He was surprised he hadn't already been stomped on for his impertinence. But in reflecting on Rinshera's behavior before she'd transformed, he surmised she was indeed a very patient kind of dragon. She went on as though he hadn't interrupted her, her gaze drifting off to stare into some private abyss. "Others are raised to hate us, and they act in defense of their homes and families. This I cannot fault, though it comes from ignorance. Most crimes do." As she spoke, Thanen found himself relaxing. There was something gentle about her, not just her words, but the way she stood. Shocking as it was to think that way about a dragon, he couldn't help himself. She felt sad concerning dragon slayers, not angry. She was patient with Thanen's stupidest questions, not wrathful. "You're amazing," he whispered. Her dazzling eyes returned to him, sharp, startled. "What?" "Truly, you're amazing." Silence again. Then she leaned her great head down, warm breath curling around him. It didn't smell like dead things as he'd expected. The same fragrance of lilies and moonlight filled his senses. "Then you will stay and learn?" He found himself nodding. More surprisingly, he found himself smiling broadly. "I'll stay. Happily." True to his word, Thanen remained in the dragon's grotto, allowing Rinshera to teach him all about music. At first, he wanted her to transform back into her human shape, which she did, but after a week or so, she took to dragon form each evening to hunt, and Thanen found himself, if not quite used to it, more in awe than afraid. She really was lovely in either form, and her voice could stun the heavens when she sang as a dragon. Thanen learned more about music and voice and even life than he'd ever done on his own. Something about Rinshera, perhaps her agelessness and grace, moved him to craft songs such as he'd never dreamed. He felt closer to capturing that teasing melody he could never quite finish. 8 days since coming to Rinshera's home in the woods, the two sat upon the slick rocks beneath the cascading falls. Thanen strummed his lute, feeling out the beginnings of a new song inspired by the birds winging around the trees, catching breakfast. That was thanks to Rinshera, who had taught him to hear the music in everyday life. It was the most beautiful array of sounds he'd ever heard. How had he spent his growing-up years missing it entirely? Somehow, the drudgery of work and sorrow and general busyness had deafened him to the true song of the world, which lay in everything. Rinshera, still in dragon form after her nocturnal hunt, was halfway in the water, her mighty tail lazily swishing this way and that like a cat. She cocked her great head toward Thanen's lute, listening carefully. "It's lovely," she said after a moment, "but that second chord isn't quite right." Thanen listened to the birds for a moment, then plucked a new chord. "There, much better." He smiled, pleased with himself and with all the world. He'd never in his wildest dreams suspected that a dragon's praise would become the dearest thing in the world. "Are there words?" asked Rinshera. He shrugged. "A few. Not enough yet to sing them." "They will come." She lowered her head back to the slippery rocks, her yellow mane tumbling into the clear pool to bob around like seaweed. Thanen smiled at that, struck again by how relaxed he now felt around his giant benefactress. "Do you intend to come with me when I sing for the world again?" he asked, mindlessly trying new notes for his birthing song. "Of course." He glanced at her, noting the upturning of her fanged maw. He shuddered in spite of himself. She was still horrifying. Beautiful, but horrifying. "I will be in human shape for that, I vow it." Her laughter filled his head. His smile deepened. He was glad of her answer beyond the relief it would provide for others. He wanted her along. He wanted to share his music with her, not only now, but always. The birdsong cut short. Rinshera lifted her head, a growl crawling up her sinewy throat. Thanen stared into the shady woods, fingers tight on his lute strings. His heart knocked against his ribs like an anxious invader. "Someone is coming," Rinshera said. "He smells of dragon blood." "A dragon slayer? Here?" Thanen set aside his lute and rose, nerves humming in his ears. He rubbed his palms against his jerkin. "Hide! You must hide!" "It is too late for that." She stretched to her full height, sending ripples across the water. Her head came close to the top of the waterfall. Her scales glistened in the morning light. "You must hide." She plucked him up, pinching his jerkin collar between her deadly claws, dangling him far above the crystal water. He clutched his lute close, while butterflies fluttered in his stomach. "Wait, don't—" "Unhand him, fiend!" rang out the rich voice of a man beneath his gleaming helm. Thanen spotted the dragon slayer standing at the edge of the trees, in full armor and a tabard of gold. Linthian. Rat and blast it! The man wouldn't listen to reason if he hailed from Lintha. "Rinshera!" Thanen called, hoping at least one of them would heed him. "Let me talk to him. Let me try—" She tossed him onto the cliff top beside the raging water. He landed lightly. It hadn't been a far throw, and he was agile enough. He rolled to his feet. His lute, however, slipped from his hands and landed with a heartbreaking crack. His chest constricted, but he had no time to lament. Not now. "Rinshera, listen to me!" "Stay there, lad," called the dragon slayer. "I will soon end this miserable creature's life and set you free.
You've been brave indeed to survive this long. Now let a man settle this matter."
Choosing to ignore the lad comment, Thanen instead rolled his eyes at the knight's bravado. "Thank you, but I don't require help. She's not holding me captive. She's really very sweet," the knight scoffed, holding his sword aloft.
"I see you've addled his wits, few though I'm assured they were."
"Hey now," Thanen began, but no one was listening. Rinshera unfolded her wings, scattering morning sunbeams across the wide clearing. The dragon slayer began to chant. Magery, Thanen realized. Dark magic. "Stop! Rinshera, he's—" Violet light exploded across the clearing, and the dragon let out a roar. Water splashed and sparkled in the sun. Thanen shouted her name again, squinting through the magic to catch a glimpse of his friend, but the glow brightened, swallowing the world. A second roar followed. Thanen yelled into the abyss. Aqua light split the violet haze in two, then flung the dark magic aside, allowing dawn to return to the clearing. Thanen blinked, finding Rinshera still in dragon form, with her wings fully extended, a gem the size of his lute clutched in her mighty hands. The gem was the same aqua shade, glowing brilliantly like it housed a star. The dragon slayer was on his knees, trembling, his sword broken in half. "Fear not, Thanen," came the dragon's flowing voice. "This little dragon slayer is no match for a dragon of my skill. His past sin, the reason for his scent, is slaughtering a hatchling, and for that, his life ends today." Thanen swallowed hard, afraid Rinshera would gobble the man up, armor, leather, and all. Instead, she lifted her scaled hand, extended a golden claw, and lowered it toward the man's exposed back. At the same moment, Thanen caught movement in his periphery. Spinning, he found 3 more armored people emerging from the trees, a net of violet light caught between them. Too late. They tossed it upon her wings. At once, the net tightened around her, forcing her to roll onto her side. The earth trembled. The dragon roared. Thanen shouted for them to stop, but no one heeded. "Good work," one man said, helping the first dragon slayer to his feet.
"That was too close," the knight replied.
"It worked, didn't it?" Snorting, the knight rubbed a dent in his armor, then nodded toward Thanen.
"Watch out, he's a dragon friend."
"Looks harmless enough." The man lifted a hand and waved toward Thanen. "Can you get down, or should we fetch you, lad?" Thanen bristled. He'd always looked young for his age, certainly, but at 26 years old he was by no means a lad. That's not important right now. Studying Rinshera caught in the net of violet light, the thought to run away along the cliffs flitted through his mind, but he couldn't leave her. Not like this. Not after all her kindness and help. He was her friend, strange as that was. Judging the distance from here to the pool, he rubbed his palms against his jerkin, afraid to jump. The water was deep, and Rinshera had fallen at such an angle that there was room to plunge into the water, but it was a long jump even so. Glancing at the men, he found one knight knocking an arrow. Was the dragon slayer going to end Thanen's life right here and now, no questions asked? "I'll take my chances with the jump, then." A bird trilled a note from a tall elm. Thanen found himself smiling. At least it was a beautiful day to die. "Need y'all protect me!" he cried, then dove headfirst from the cliff, aiming for the crystal pool beside Rinshera's glorious scales. Someone shouted. Something whistled past his head. The water came at him fast. Splash! Cold wrapped around him, a strange sensation of hard and soft. He slithered through the water, surprised by its depth, though he'd seen the bottom before. An arrow struck the pebbles beneath his hands and bounced. He writhed away from the spot as quickly as he could. In the depths, shimmering lights danced around him. He twisted to face the surface, dazzled by the dragon's platinum scales anew. The light of the violet net was brighter somehow, too,
and threads of dark magic shimmered near the water. He just needed to reach them. And then what? He had no magic. He didn't even have a knife, and he was running out of air. His lungs were on fire, and his head was growing light. None of that matters. Just try. He kicked upward, glad he'd learned to swim along with the other boys in his village during warm summer evenings long ago. As he propelled himself through the water, grasping at any thread of hope he could find, any possible idea to free Rinchera from her enemies, a sound filled his ears. It wasn't water, and it wasn't birdsong, or even human shouts. This was something otherworldly, something that sang. He halted in the water, lungs blazing. Searching the depths, he spotted the aqua gem he'd seen the dragon wield before. It lay gleaming on a rock shelf not far from the shore but immersed in the water. Would that help him to cut the violet netting? It seemed to call out to him, beckoning. His vision wavered. His head pounded. Air! Get air! He shoved himself upward, broke the surface, and gulped in breath greedily. Someone on shore shouted. The groan of a tautening string throbbed through Thanen's ears, heightened by his adrenaline. He drew a quick breath and dove back underwater. The whistle of an arrow chased him. Cold stabbed his thigh, followed by pain erupting across his leg. Kicking his way toward the gem became agony. He glanced at his leg and found an arrow jutting from it. Red clouded around him. He released his breath despite himself, then snapped his mouth shut, whirled, and kept swimming toward the gem. He was running out of time. They'd kill Rinchera any moment now. Almost there. Nearly. He reached out. His fingers brushed the gem. It was massive, the size of his lute just as he'd judged before, and doubtless heavier. Still, he had to try. Grasping the gem, he hefted it and flipped backward in the water, clutching the gem in both hands. It was light as a feather. Uprighting himself, he pressed the glowing gem to his chest with one arm, then used his free arm to swim back toward the surface. Hopefully, whoever had shot him thought they'd aimed better and didn't expect him to reemerge. Lungs protesting, heart hammering, Thanen kicked with all his might. The glistening surface felt miles away. Keep swimming. Don't stop. Bubbles escaped his lips. His lungs were searing now. Almost there. Water rolled off his head, and air filled his lungs, drawing hacking coughs. Despite that, he shoved himself toward Rinchera. She was still half immersed in the pool. The men, all four of them, stood upon the dragon's scales near her neck. One held aloft what looked like a sword made of the violet light, while the others argued about who should end her life. The net of dark magery hummed with power. Thanen let out a curse, too far away to stop the deadly strike. "Please don't do this!" The men chortled. The glaring sun mocked him in its silence. The birds held their peace. The violet blade lifted higher. Rinchera trembled, letting out a weak roar. "No!" Thanen screamed. Desperate, treading water, he clutched the gem close. It was too far to throw. He had no means of stopping them or distracting them. What can I do? The gem hummed. Then it shifted beneath his fingers. He looked down and started. The gem had changed into the shape of a lute, though it still kept its crystalline facets. Strings of light hummed, compelling him to play. The men shouted. One knocked another arrow and took aim at Thanen, but he didn't care. His attention was riveted on the magic lute. His fingers found the first note of his unfinished melody. With a quick breath, he strummed the instrument, then fell into the song he'd yearned for years to complete. The music rolled like waves across the water. Aqua light struck the netting. The violet glow flared. The net burst apart and vanished. Rinchera stretched to her full height, throwing her captors to the ground. This time, her roar shook the world. She twisted her long neck toward her assailants. Smoke streamed from her nostrils. The dragon slayers raced for the trees, shouting. One tripped, face-planting on the slick rocks. No one turned back to help him.
Dive underwater, Thanen.
Rinshera's voice filled his mind, commanding. Thanen took a protracted breath, then obeyed, ducking beneath the surface. Turning his eyes upward, he watched fire bloom above the depths, engulfing the world, tinting everything orange. He imagined the screams of the dying, glad he couldn't see the gruesome details. The irony of being on the dragon's side didn't escape him. The fact that they'd been so gleeful about ending her life and used dark magic freely gave him peace in their deaths. They weren't slaying dragons to put food on their families' tables. They did it for sport, for pleasure, for bloodlust. This was justice. Thanen waited as long as he could, clutching the glowing loot in one hand. The barrage of fire died away. His lungs screamed for oxygen. Kicking his legs, he winced at the pain in his thigh, then broke free of the water. Drinking in air, he searched the pool and shore. None of the trees had been hurt, though some moss looked singed. And there was Rinshera, back in human form, standing on the water's brink. She looked dry and unruffled, like she'd not been held down and nearly killed mere moments ago. Her radiant smile was set on him, filling Thanen with relief and pride. For the first time in his life, he wasn't useless. He'd done right, and he'd done well. Rinshera held her hand out to him. "Well done, minstrel true. Now come, we'd best leave this land for a time." He waded toward her, not losing his grip on the lute. "Why?" "More nights will come. I'm too dangerous to be let alone now, as are you." "What about your horde?" She grinned, revealing very real fangs. "They'll never find it without a dragon's aid, not unless they manage to kill me. My wards are too powerful for that." Tenderly, he rested the lute on a mossy rock, then slipped from the water. He hissed as the pain in his thigh grew worse. "You're wounded." She raced to his side and knelt to examine the arrow. "It's nothing. Could have been worse. A flesh wound, really. Besides, it'll make a great song." Her lips quirked up. "You'll use your new instrument to sing of your own heroics?" He met her dazzling gaze. "No, fair one. I'll sing of yours." He meant it, too, for the lyrics that had long haunted the edges of his mind, the melody he could never finish, bloomed now like full spring, and the words were for Rinshera.
I hope you enjoyed listening to The Minstrel and the Dragon, Part 2, by M.H. Woodscourt, narrated by Paeter Frandsen of Christian Geek Central. If you haven't read any of Woodscourt's other books, but you liked this story, you'll want to check out her Dragons of Rokan series, which is set in the same world. It has more dragons, obviously, strong found family themes, and twins discovering their magic. The first book in the series is When Darkness Hunts the Dawn, and I'll have a direct link for it in the show notes. If you enjoyed listening to Paeter narrate the story, you might also enjoy listening to his audio dramas at spiritblade.com, or his podcast, Christian Geek Central, where he discusses movies, video games, and all things enjoyed by self-proclaimed geeks from a Christian worldview. I just want to remind you guys that you can always apply to be featured on the podcast if you have a fantasy short story you'd like us to narrate. Or if you have a favorite author or story you think the world needs to read, you can always recommend an author or story. Not every story or author is the right fit for the podcast, but when I find those gems in the applications or recommendations, it's my favorite way to book a new featured author, because I can only hunt down so many new authors and stories on my own. So go to findingfantasyreads.com/contact, where you can find the application form for authors, as well as the contact form for readers. I'll have a direct link for it in the show notes. Thank you all for listening, and happy reading.